Mic's on? Can you hear me good? Audio sounding good. We'll wait for some people to jump in here today. Let's turn that mic over there. All right. Hey guys. Adam here in the AeroWorks workshop live tonight, Saturday night live here in the workshop. Just thought we've been talking about doing some of these live broadcasts, working out all the bugs, and just thought we'd give it a go. Don't have an agenda or a schedule of any type. I do want to talk about the fuel system we've been working with AS Flight Lines on, specifically for the Viking aircraft engine installation. So before we get going, oh, there we go. We got Bob and William there. Thanks for joining, guys. Appreciate it. Definitely use the comment section down below there. Throw your comments and questions down. Like I said, no specific agenda as of yet, but I did want to kind of go over this fuel system setup. So, leave a comment down below. How many guys are using Viking engines for their Super Duty? Or if you're not using a Viking engine, what kind of engine are you planning on using? The nice thing with AS Flight Lines, Steve over there at Aircraft Specialties, kind of got two different company names, but they really specialize in building high quality stainless steel fuel and brake lines. And he's, a top notch at what they do. Everything is custom made, custom length, custom fit. And we've been working with him on two things. One, the stainless steel brake line system for the Super Duty. And if you've seen, like Mark has a video about the same setup on his, he's doing a dual brake setup. I've just decided to do the single-sided pilot side brake setup. But that system has really been designed specifically for the Super Duty so that you could just buy one kit. It's 3 pairs of hoses, a set of hoses that come right off of the brake pedals, go to your Matco parking brake, out of the Matco parking brake, down along the center of the fuselage floor. They penetrate through the floor through a pass-through elbow, and then they pop out, and then you have a set of lines that run back to the gear. So that's a nice just turnkey. If you need the Super Duty brake kit, you can go buy that. It's ready to go right now. One of the things that I wanted to do was, and I'm just reading some of the chat here, who's popping in and commenting. Yep, lots of cool Viking on my stove. Cool. Is with the Viking engine, you're using a header tank. And the header tank, of course, sits behind the baggage wall. And that is where your gravity-fed fuel tanks feed the header tank. And it's really the header tank that's the heart of the Viking engine, because that is where the fuel comes from. That's where the fuel pumps are. And in fact, in the bottom of here, you can see the dual redundant fuel pumps that have been designed for the Viking engine. Now, one of the things that we didn't want to do, we didn't want to start monkeying with the fittings and the connections and have some type of a disagreement with Viking that, we're using something that doesn't mesh with what he designed with his aircraft engine. So the only thing that we're changing, if you even call it a change, is we're just improving the fact that we're taking high quality lines from the tanks all the way down into the top of the header tank, which is up here. Now on the top of the header tank, if you're not familiar with it, it basically has 4 ports. They're all the same. It doesn't matter which 2 you use for fuel and which 2 you use for vent. They all go to the same spot. And then you have a fuel transducer for the fuel gauge for this tank. Now what Viking provides is essentially, they come installed as these small little brass barbed fittings. and they're already installed, and you push on your rubber hose and you clamp it down, and that's your fuel lines and your vent lines. Well, when we wanted to go with the higher quality stainless lines, it was easy to get from the wing tank to the fuselage, but then we had to come up with a way to make it look good, because that was important to me, to not have a bunch of stuff hanging in the side of the cockpit and running all down the side walls and everything, but also to have it functional, safe, and that's kind of what we've come up with. So I'll show you a couple. The two main components in the wing are really the two short supply lines. So when your fuel tank's installed in the wing, the supply side is going to be very close to the fuselage. So you have these short lines here. They're already, like I said, this is already in a kit, made, ready to go. The longer lines are the lines that come from the vent side, which is going to be that outboard side of the tank, and then they're going to be feeding to the vent line. So you have, essentially from each wing tank, you're going to have one short and one long line. Those are already made. You can buy those right now on their system. Where we take it from there is where we kind of started working with Steve on, and the way we have done that, and hopefully you guys will be able to see this. If not, just leave a comment, but you're going to have your header tank, which is mounted right here. And your fuel penetration lines, your pass-throughs, are going to be here and here, and we have to get a way to get those lines on the inside of the fuselage, down the interior, and into the tank. And on the passenger side, of course, they're shorter because the tank is on this side. And on the pilot side, they're longer because they have to swoop down and then come across the fuselage. So what we've done here is each side, well, let's start with the tank first. One of the things we're doing, and we are waiting on these fittings, but what we've done, we've also replaced the pop-on cheaper fuel filters with a high-quality Holley racing fuel filter. These are cleanable, they meet the flow rate and all that good stuff, and they've got a swivel here. So once we get the nipples installed into the top of the header tank, this will simply fit on here, and at any time you want to change out your filter, you can take off this bushing and you can remove this filter and clean it out. So we'll have two of these installed in the top of the tank for supply lines, and then two for vent lines. Okay, that's what's actually going to be attaching to the tank. But how do we get to the tank? And that really comes in the form of what we've got set up here. Now, if you're building the Super Duty or you're building any of the Zeniths, you know that there's not a lot of room between this control cage here, this box. You've got the slot at the top. You've got a little bit of room at the top, about 3.5, 4 inches, that we're going to be working with here. And you know, the other ways that people get fuel lines is they come in the side and they run down this channel here, and they end up popping out somewhere. We were trying to keep from having to do that. So in our case, we have two pass-through fittings. One of them is a 90-degree fitting, and this will basically drill through and stub out for the fuel lines to come in from the wings. And then the other fitting, the vent line one, is a straight through, but the hose has a 90 on it. So you see what happens here is you end up with this nice staggered, overlapped and parallel hose setup. So you've got your two nipples sticking on the outside of the plane right here and here, one's supply, one's feed. And then what we end up with inside the fuselage here is a nice shutoff valve right here at the side where the fuel is coming in, so we can easily shut off our fuel. And then we have a very low profile, I know it's hard to see because we're on the outside of the plane, but these are going to be basically staggered like this here. So they're going to be tight up against the wall and running directly back like this, and then they come down in and they go right into the top of the header tank. So we've got one that's slightly shorter because we're taking up the space of this fuel filter, and then the long one, of course, goes right into the other port there. So again, just kind of a quick overview of what components they're including. So if you do end up with a Viking engine and the header tank scenario. Now, Jan also does have a different header tank now, so that's something that's going to have to be taken into consideration. They have a flat, he calls it like the pancake header tank. It's a flat one that goes down in the hellhole. This is the one that mounts on the long tube on the side there. But you will be able to order a kit now that will be able to say, you know, hey, I've got the Viking engine. I'm using the side-mounted round header tank, and I want all the fuel lines and everything for that. So again, fuel lines for the wings, those are pretty straightforward and standard, almost regardless of what engine you have. But it's the getting it from the side of the fuselage into and down into that header tank that, that we are really shooting to make look good and neat. Let's take a look here. We got any other questions? Anything's popping up here? Why do you need that shutoff valve there? The main reason, I suppose, on that would be, Bob, is that if you have, obviously, if you have fuel in your wings and you want to, you know, disconnect the fuel filters to clean them, it'd be much easier just to shut them off right there, and then fuel stops there, and you're not going to really have anything dripping down in there. It wouldn't be a major deal, but just having a spot to have a shut off, it's just a quarter turn. And it's the only place really in the plane that you're going to have a shutoff. A lot of people ask about, on the Viking engine, they're like, where's your shutoff valve? You know, I don't have a shutoff valve on the floor. Well, there really is no shutoff valve. The fuel pumps are really the only way that the fuel is going to get to the engine. And I've talked to Jan about that, and they just don't put a shutoff valve anywhere. Now, he's coming up with another one that he's got there where he's mounting it in the center above to, that's more for balancing the fuel. This is more just to provide a way to say, hey, I'm going to disconnect the right wing fuel filter. I want to take it apart and clean it. Boom, let me shut off that valve, and I'm only going to have whatever fuel is left from the shutoff valve to the top of the header tank, and that you could probably just catch that in a pan or whatever. You could also, you know, if your tanks are low already, you could also just pull the sump on the bottom of the header tank and just drain what's in there, and you'd have no fuel in there. So it's not necessarily necessary, but it did provide a way to make also the other connections that we needed to make there, and give you a way to just have a shut off. Again, I would probably have this, you know, strapped in the open position for safety at all the time, but have it so that you could, you know, maybe unvelcro it or pull it open to shut it off. So that's kind of what that's for. Again, this is still all kind of in flux, if you will, because it's not installed yet. So the only thing I'm waiting on right now is I want to get the rest of this tank prepped here, which is going to be the AN to NPT fittings. We got to get those final done so that we can make sure our all these connections are good. Then this tank will be installed in there, and then we'll start doing the holes for these lines. And when we get to that, we're going to definitely do we'll have a detailed video, you know, showing the installation of that, you know, all that works going in. Let me just kind of catch up here. I'm looking at the, let's see here. To chain of the fuel filter, yep, that makes sense. Why do you think about having a shutoff at the wing tank? Yeah, I think we answered that, but that's, yeah. So that's really it on the fuel line of things. What else have we been working on? If you saw the last little catch-up video we did, been working quite a bit, getting this shelf work done up in here. I finally got a pass-through hole done on the firewall. I originally drilled that hole out, and then I used a punch, and the hole was not big enough to accommodate the Viking ECU connectors, and I definitely didn't want to bend those and cut those up. So I was real careful about opening that back up and making a nice hole. I ended up buying a nibbler tool on Amazon that you put on your drill, and that thing just cut like Swiss cheese, went right through there, and was able to get that opened up no problem. Let's see, what do we got here? Small hole in handle with safety wire, keep it open, or maybe breakaway wire. So yeah, that's exactly right, Hawker Tech. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, we definitely don't want somebody up there, you know, hanging their jacket on here and turning this off. So it would definitely be secured in a way that this would always be in line and the flow would be flowing the right direction. What is the function of the drain lines? I'm not sure which drain lines you're talking about. The drain line, the vent lines or the drain lines? The question from Aaron there. I'm not sure on that one. The vent lines obviously are just to create, vacuum, so you don't have the thumb over the straw action going on. The tanks, if you watched our last video, they're out at the welder right now getting those, essentially the same type of a fuel gauge that we use here. We're using a transducer type fuel gauge for the wing tanks. Viking sells a weld-in kit that allows you to get a really low profile top mounted fuel gauge in the top of the tank, but you have to have those welded in. Now, if you haven't ordered your kit or you're still ordering parts from ZENTIH, you can actually send those to ZENTIH, and their welder guy down there who does an excellent job can do them for you there. If you get the tanks after the fact, then you're going to have to either do it yourself or, find somebody to do it for you. So I got a guy that's a welder up the street. He's doing that. Hopefully they'll come back soon. Now that is a super thin-walled fuel tank, and you got to be a pretty good welder to be doing that stuff right. But the nice thing with that is that, and I can grab one here, is that these sit nice and flush in the top of the wing, and so here's what it looks like outside of the tank, and this gives you a really nice. It actually recesses it down into the wing, tank slightly, so that you don't have to have any kind of a cover on top of the tank itself or the skins, and it's just a very accurate, resistance only type thing versus the old VW float that you have to. One was never crazy about cutting a gigantic hole in the side of the tank, and then you have to bend it and do all that stuff, and it's a float that can get stuck and all that. This is very kind of foolproof. So a little bit of an upgrade. I don't remember exactly what they charge for it. You can see it on Viking's site under accessories or fuel. They sell 2 of these and the bungs, and you can get it done wherever you want to do that. Any other questions here? If you guys haven't already, give the video a thumbs up, and if you're not subscribed, it really does help out. We all of us content creators that spend time on these videos, we do try and put a lot of time into it, and hopefully, somebody gets some value out of these videos, even if it's just your love of aviation, watching the videos and tuning in and hearing what other people are doing, getting some ideas. I mean, we're all sharing. If you're on social media, you're looking at pictures, you're looking at videos, you're getting ideas, and it's the community as a whole that really helps solve a lot of these questions and problems. Because as you know, as a builder, if you are building, regardless if it's a ZENTIH or any other kit, everything isn't in the instructions, and that's why they're amateur experimental build aircraft, is because it takes some knowledge, it takes some digging, some research, and I don't know how many hours I've stood over here at the electronics table here just figuring out, where am I going to put this wire? If I pull this wire here, I'm going to have to do that. And it's just a lot of looking and looking. Again, it's not an assembly line. Everybody's doing something different. We're putting different engines in. We're putting different avionics in. And no two systems are the same. So, it's one of those things where we're kind of constantly on the fly, but just trying to take time and do it right. And, hopefully in the end it'll be a nice, reliable system. So, all right, does anybody have any specific questions on anything else? Do you want to see something specific on the plane? I know we don't have an exact scheduled agenda. Are these things something you guys want to do? If it's something that's, you are getting value out of, you like to see it on a regular basis, we'll definitely set it up. We're even thinking about doing some multiple camera scenarios where we can keep like a wide shot and then maybe take a camera around. We're still playing with all this technology. As much as I do this all the time, it seems like it never always works exactly right. Luckily, I got my son helping with a lot of the technical stuff. I'm not putting any autopilot servos in. I don't have an autopilot in this plane. I thought about it at one time. I thought, for a long cross country, sitting there, do I want to have it just, holding the heading? You could. I mean, the servos are about $750 a piece for each, for roll and pitch. And then you have to come up with a way to get them mounted in there. And, you know, unlike like a Vans aircraft where they have a kit specifically for the different Vans models, they don't really have anything. So you kind of have to come up with your own. And, you know, this is a first build for me. So I wanted to build it as true to the plans as they wanted it to be. I didn't want to go too far outside of the experimental realm and start experimenting on top of experimental, if you will. So I just wanted to keep it very simple, very just fly, you know, stick and rudder. You've seen when Roger's up doing demo flights or Sebastian, you know, they're pretty hands off. Once this plane is trimmed out, this is a bigger plane, it's a heavier, steady plane, got those big chunky wings. So, you know, hopefully I can read a compass. Hopefully I can, you know, stay on the magenta line. And, you know, I think it all comes down to how long you're going to sit in the plane. You know, 3-4 hours is long enough. So maybe I missed it, but what did you decide about brake lines? Same source. Yeah. So I can show you the brake lines. The brake line set is, again, AS flight lines. And it really consists of again, three pairs of components. Let me grab one more piece over here. Did I set that down? Okay. I'm not sure where I set the one. Oh, here we go. All right. So the Matco brake system that you know, the brake cylinders you get from Zenith are what we're talking about here. But the actual brake system itself from AS Flight Lines for the Super Duty consists of 3 pairs of lines. One I've already got installed, and that is basically just 2 lines that come off of the brake cylinders. They're slightly staggered because of the offset. They come to about the middle of the cabin, where you're going to then have your Matco brake valve. Okay, and then directly from the brake valve back, you have 2 equal lines that have, one end has a straight end on them, one end has a 90 on it. And they basically, we'll just hook them up here real quick. They come straight off the back of the brake valve, like this. Right here. So you'll have the brake valve coming straight down the fuselage. They go through a penetration in the floor, 90 degree down. And then we come out of the fuselage bottom, and then we go right down to the gear legs. So we have a pre-cut, made up line that basically will come out of the bottom, down here, cross the bottom, swoop down, and hit the brake cylinder. So this kit is already available right now. You can order it, the Super Duty brake line kit. The only thing you have to decide is if you have dual brakes or single brakes. So the Matco valve, again, you have to order that separately. Zenith does not provide that, and I don't believe AS Flightline sells them, but you can get them on Aircraft Spruce. It's the Matco PVD, and it's just a 2-line brake valve. So this line set is all available. It is all done by AS Flight Lines, and again, top quality work there. When do I think I'll be flying? Oh, that's a great question. You know, I started this in August of last year, and the plan was to be really close to flying it a year later, but of course, you know, with everything that went on in the world this last couple of years, it's been a little crazy. So, and work and that, and you know, it's cutting into the build time and things, but we're getting a lot closer. We're getting through some of the harder, detailed stuff, and where I'm at right now with the schedule is my goal right now is to get this fuel system up to the header tank complete, get the engine plumbed, get it wired. It's already got power. And then I have to do some some of the engine instrument switches, batteries, pumps, that stuff has to be hooked up. I'd like to get to where I can get this engine fired up and feel like I've got that system, you know, kind of in line, ready to go. Then the next thing will be, of course, finishing brake lines, making sure everything's done there. I've got to secure the horizontal on the back and install the rudder. And then I'll be pushing off the fuselage out of the way. So the fuselage is pretty much, 80 to 90% done. I've already got the right wing has been started for quite a while. What we'll do is we'll get our long table back out. If you've seen one of the previous videos, I have a table set up that I do with these speed horses, and it gives you a nice 12-foot long table. We'll start getting the wings done. We'll knock out those wings, get in the fuel lines, get the tanks in, get our wiring done, and then it's really just all that finished stuff. So my true goal, if I was to say, perfect world, would be that, midsummer by Oshkosh 2020, what are we in, 2022 for next year, between Oshkosh and between the Zenith fly-in, that's kind of my goal. I would love to have this flying at the Zenith flying next year. That's really what my true goal would be. It's totally doable. I mean, if you can get out and you can work on something, it's just getting the time, having this stuff in order, and just getting out there and doing it. So luckily, I'm fortunate enough that I do get some time to work on it, but a lot of times, you get pulled away from different things. So, but right now, that's kind of the goal. We're shooting for between Oshkosh and Zenith Fly-In 2022. Let's see, when do you think we fly? Okay, awesome piece of machinery. Yeah, it's on, I don't know if you saw the one that was on the floats in Alaska. Unfortunately, he had his get destroyed. Well, it didn't get destroyed, but he got knocked over in the wind. Ivan up there, he had a beautiful Super Duty with a Viking, and he's down in like Ketchikan, Seward area. Gets really windy down there, and he had it strapped down to a dock, and it just basically flipped it over. But I think he's already got it back and doing repairs and getting it back in order. It looked really great on floats, though. Steve provided me with valve, and okay, good, you got that. I will put a link. I'll either put a link in this video after it's published, John, or I will. In the previous video, I think there's some links to the AS flight lines, where you can buy the hoses. Am I missing anything? Here. Hold on, guys, just a little technical difficulties there. Sometimes the camera will do a pause. Tell me when you're back there. Good? Okay. Yeah, so there we go. Yeah, so that's what's been going on there. As far as up front goes, like I said, got all the Dynon sensors installed, got those pulled through, got my battery solenoids installed, got the capacitors installed, got my ground bus bars installed. Really just working through all that. My next component that I really need to start doing is getting that final panel cut out. I've been talking about that, so I can get that sub panel put in, and then I can get my main panel put up there so I can start pulling all my Dynon cables and getting those landed and going where they need to go. So that is something we're doing there. What, if any, corrosion primer do you have for the fuselage? I didn't really do any of the, the Core-Tec that was in there from the factory, both the Zenith Canada factory and Zenith itself. Anything that they put on there, I left on there. Small parts and pieces where there was a bracket or something going together, I use that self-etching primer. My plane is not going to be stored outside, and I'm not in a corrosion environment. I'm not going crazy with the corrosion stuff, so to answer your question, I'm not really doing any heavy corrosion or primer painting on that. What's the door on the side of the fuselage for? That's for the, it's not necessary, but this is a access panel to easily get to the header tank. So it allows you another point to not only do inspections, because once that hellhole has all the cabling going front to back, it's going to be hard to kind of pop up into there. And this just gives you a spot to get in and get to your fuel filters, to do condition inspections. It's a little overkill, I suppose, but you know, again, we're not building, this isn't a Lancer or something that's going 300 knots. So, and I don't have all the seals on here right now, but it has a rubber seal and all that. It'll be nice and tight. But that's what it's for. The company that makes these two experimental aircraft accessories or experimental accessories, I'll put the link down on the video after this is done too for them. That guy makes everything. You want a panel for whatever, it's already made. They give you the rim, the door, the hinge, and all you have to do is cut out the hole, and it's really straightforward. So that's nice because you don't have to fab up stuff from scratch, especially if you don't have a you know, like all the bending tools and all that stuff. So so that is that. Let's see, what else do we have going? The belly pod, let's talk about that a little bit. So as you know, on the Viking, with the Viking engine, you're going to have this, I'll grab it right here. This is the radiator for the Viking 195, and it essentially mounts flush firewall forward right behind the engine. And one of the things looks-wise is that you've got this thing hanging down, the cowling comes down, and then it goes right back up to the fuselage and it's flat again. And so with the addition of the belly pod on here, it's going to do a couple things. Well, it's going to do multiple things. One, it is going to provide a nice flow from cowling to radiator to belly of the aircraft, but two, all of the stuff that has to go front to back, from fuel lines, wiring, anything that would be running through the cabin, running through that center channel, is now going to be tightly and neatly tucked up inside of that belly pod. And my plan with that, I've already fabbed up one of the sides here, so I'll show you that. So if you can picture this being the profile of the belly pod, starting where basically the radiator starts right here, and then this belly pod contours back up right to where before where the gear starts. So that's going to allow basically all of this room here below the aircraft, which is almost, you know, 8 to 10 inches of space down the center channel, as wide as the aircraft is, to run wiring, hoses, cable, antennas. Everything will be basically built and tucked up on the bottom of the aircraft inside of the belly pod. So whether or not I use this for cargo, maybe not. It's not going to be a lot of room in there anyways, but you could put duffel bags, you could put tie downs, you could put your chocks in there, ropes. But the main thing really is just to be a nice aerodynamic shroud for all the stuff that needs to run along the bottom of the plane. I was never a big fan of just having the fuel line on the bottom of the plane just exposed. So it's going to allow all that stuff to be enclosed and neatly organized, essentially in a communications and fuel channel in the bottom of the plane. So this is it's by no means a kit, would I say. You know, Zenith on their website, they still show options for the Super Duty that aren't even options. Either they're included or they don't even sell them. And one of the things is the belly pod, and if you call Zenith and say, hey, I want to buy the belly pod, they say, well, we don't, that's something that Canada was working on. Well, you call Canada and they're like, you know, we don't really have the kit available. It's just kind of, you don't really get a straight answer. So Jan and Alyssa at Viking do have, like I said, it's not necessarily a kit. It's essentially these two panels that are a little bit heavier gauge aluminum, laser cut out. They cut out a laser door. And then the rest of the material is just angle and a couple sheets of material. And they give you a hand drawing. So it's pretty much a fab yourself deal with the exception of these two side panels. I am doing something a little different with mine in that, unlike the Zenith, or excuse me, the Viking version, where they just basically held this up to the side of the fuselage and caught that last little 1/4 inch and put rivets there, I'm actually going to be running a channel, an angle on the bottom of the plane to give me a whole new lip to mount to. So I'm going to have a nice secure lip to mount down the whole side of the aircraft. And that way, on the bottom of the plane, I can alter this strip to make it around the rivets I need to as I need, but I'm not going to be just hanging on a little edge on the side. I'm sure it's fine, and theirs seems to be working fine. I just thought it looked a little bit smoother. It'll allow you to kind of get a better edge too when it comes to where the bottom of the aircraft and the top of the baggage pod will be meeting up. So that's what I'm doing. I'm going to use the angle, and hopefully that'll work out good. Hey Joe, thanks for joining in. Have you decided on a paint scheme? Yeah, my paint scheme's been out there for a while. If you go back to any of the previous videos, look at the thumbnails. AeroWorks, my company, is primarily orange and black, and on the aircraft itself, the whole entire tail is orange, and the fuselage is what's called Nardo gray. If you've ever seen, there's some Lamborghinis out there, some Audis. Audi has a color that's very similar, but it's called Nardo gray. It's almost like a military, glossy, grayish gunship gray. It's kind of a really cool, subdued color, but it's glossy. So we've got the all of the fuselage will be gray with some flat black. We're going to be orange tail. The fin comes down, and when on that angle of that tail there, if you were to continue that line down to the doors, we're going to transition to a flat black on the side. So it's not a very flashy scheme. It's just something I like the colors. I think when you're going to see it in person, it's going to really pop out, and you're going to be pretty impressed with the detail of it. Also, if you haven't seen, as far as some of the other custom stuff we've already done in the past, we had, I'll pull this up here. If you haven't seen these before, these are our seats, and these were from Flightline Interiors built these. They're actually a company here in Wisconsin. They're about 40 minutes away from here. So she came out, her and her husband came out. We took several measurements because the seat pans on the Super Duty are slightly different than the previous Zenith. So there was a couple iterations done there. But this is a ultra leather. So this is a faux leather, but it's the same kind of leather you'd see like on an airline seat. Super high quality. I went with this kind of a Cirrus design here with the crushed, cross-stitched seats. Got our logos in there. We came up with a custom boot. This had to be all made because, again, the Super Duty didn't used to come with the center console. It was an option. I think it might still be an option, but I decided to go with the center console, and I think it gives it a much nicer look. So this is a custom piece that was done. And then she also built a custom armrest. It's all got the orange stitching in there. So again, keeping with the AeroWorks scheme and the colors, these seats really turned out nice. They've got the map pockets in the back and the whole deal. So, and I have a center seat as well, which is going to be real nice in the back there. I think Bob, was that from Viking? Yeah, this here set up here is from Viking. Again, they sell you, like I said, you get the two sides, or it's four pieces to make the side. You have to rivet it together. Two sides, two doors, a front and a back, a bottom skin, some angle, and a hand instruction drawing. It's pretty just kind of a DIY thing there. So let's see. Yeah, Joe, I saw you working on your wings there. You're knocking those out, man. That's awesome. There are lots of. I'm pretty sure you on the cruiser, you've got a lot more drilling and stuff to do than maybe the Super Duty does. But I know I've got quite a bit to do as well, as far as the match hole, as they call it, drilling. But yeah, looking forward. Getting a wing done is always a cool thing because it's just such an aeronautical piece of an aircraft. Seeing an aerodynamic wing, and especially on the cruiser, it's a lot sleeker looking wing too. So that's cool, man. You're getting those done. You're knocking that plane out fast. So and cool on you for doing the drone stuff too, man. I've been doing that a long time myself. I know you do the commercial stuff. So, how we doing on time here? What we got? 7:39. Looks like I got 21 people watching. That's cool. Make sure you give the video a like too. Again, just help support the channel. A lot of these channels, we're all different size channels. We see 70 to 90% of the people that watch our videos aren't even subscribers. So it doesn't cost anything to subscribe. You just hit the subscribe button. The more people that can subscribe, the more people hopefully will get shared the videos that have the same likes as you. So if you're out there searching for airplane videos and you like my videos and I like this guy's videos, then hopefully they'll crisscross and more people will be able to experience the kit building community. So, there's no charge, doesn't cost you anything. You can cancel anytime, as they say on TV. Yeah, give it a like, give it a thumbs up, share the video, comment on the video. The feedback is great. Good or bad, it doesn't matter. Like I said, I'm not a professional. I don't claim to be. I'm doing this the first time. I've spent most of my life looking at airplanes since I was a little kid. And, everything I've learned has just been from reading and watching and reading and searching the internet and studying kits and doing it myself. So, I'm kind of a hands-on person that way. So, wings are going together easy. That's awesome, Bob. Yeah. Looking forward to that. It's just, I've got a list over here. I'll just read it off to you here. So my dry erase board, I got sensor wiring, avionics shelves, brakes, torque tube bushing, torque tube. I powder coated most of my steel parts like the first week I got the kit, not even knowing what some of the parts were. Just like, hey, I'm going to get this out. I want to get it done so they get back in time. Well, powder coating looks great. It's beautiful, protected, but it adds thickness to everything. And when these pieces are really made to just be painted and then you add 1 mil or 2 mil of coating, candy shell coating on there, all of a sudden things like your green bushings don't fit anymore. And what can seem like, oh, let me just sand that down real quick, turns into hours and hours of fitting because you got to get the stick in there, you got to get the bolts in, it's very tight and everything fits great, then you tighten them down. The torque tube's too tight, and then you got to take it all back out, and you got to sand it some more, and it's just like a tedious process. So, yeah, torque tube bushing, I got that finally fitting. Baggage pod, getting my panel cut out, laying out the center console. So I'm, working out my center console here. I've got some kind of unique things going into here, so I'm doing some sketches and some drawings of what's going to be actually on the center console, lighting. My panel is actually very streamlined. There's not a whole lot on it. I've got a Dynon HDX screen, an iPad, a throttle, a flap switch, and there's not really much on the panel itself, and a USB charger. So everything else, my battery switches and starter are going to be here, key switch, pumps, and then this is all going to be lighting. So, kind of just working through this, laying this stuff out. We're going to be laser cutting out some sub panels to basically be able to build up the panels separately and then install the whole panel into the console rather than drilling individual holes and having to get things to line up. I'll just have sub panels like you might see on an airliner where you look down and there's just these square chunks of panels. So that's another thing that Steve at AS Flightlines does. He does panel cutting, he can do laser etching, he can do laser cutting. We also have a laser cutting machine here, so he can send me a template. I can say, hey, I want a panel this big with this many holes in it. He can send me a PDF. I can laser it out over here on some plywood, test it out, fit it, and then he can make me a finished heavier gauge aluminum one with all the etching and all the labeling and everything. So that's kind of a nice thing there. Center console, of course, we talked about the header tank and the fuselage fuel lines. We've talked about that in the very beginning as well. So, yeah, lots to do. Everything's a thing. If you can just keep plugging away and knocking things off the list, that's kind of what you got to do to keep these things moving. Luke, no, have you added any stiffener? The oil canning or as is, some say that's a no-go for weight. Are you talking about the oil canning back here on the fuselage? No, I did not add any additional stiffening anywhere on the fuselage. I've heard that, and again, I've only actually flown in a Zenith a couple times, but I do know that, you know, the whole issue with flying uncoordinated, and that's kind of the telltale, you know, Zenith noisemaker back there, is that you're flying uncoordinated and the fuselage is whapping around in the wind. So no, I didn't decide to add any extra angle in there. Left it pretty much as stock as far as that goes. What are you doing about cutting the vertical tail to clear the... Yeah, that's lovely. If you haven't heard about that whole deal, depending on where you're at in your build or when you got your build, I ordered my rudder like 2 years ago, when I was still kind of fiddling, like, am I going to build a plane? Am I not? Let me just go for it and buy a tail and see if I can do it. Well, 2 years ago I bought the tail, you know, got the triangle crate, set in the shelf. We ended up moving in between. Got to the new shop, got the whole thing built, and like, wow, this is great. Look how great it looks. Mounted it up on the back of the plane, and everything was fine until I went to mount it up with the horizontal on there. I'm like, holy cow, this thing's not even close. This thing's got to be cut. So let me show you what they provide. If you've built a rudder kit, probably more than a year old, I'm waiting for that video to catch up. But if you have built a rudder that is over a year or so old, you're going to notice that your rudder, your front fairing, is straight right here. Okay, as far as if you know the tail was mounted like it would be when it'd be level like this, this is straight. Well, you notice I have a piece of paper on here, and this paper came from Roger at Zenith. And basically it's a template, because this is how much material has to be removed from this rudder that's already painted, or in my case powder coated, to clear the horizontal stabilizer. So yeah, that's not going to be a fun job. I know a couple guys, whether they've painted it or done whatever, that, you know, how do you cut aluminum and make it look nice when it's already all shaped and you got to paint it like this? So no, I have not tackled that. I figured what I would start by doing is probably doing a line a lot lower, maybe duct taping it really tight and just trying it out a few times until I can get a solution that's going to cut this as smooth as possible. Worst case scenario, I either build a new rudder if I just completely hate how it turned out, or I try and just replace the nose piece here, and I maybe have to just paint it instead. This was all powder coated, so I should have known. I wish I would have known back then. I would have had it cut prior to powder coating. Didn't know that though. So look at your rudder kit, and if you don't have that big arch there, you're going to be cutting that before you put it up. Talk with Tiffany. Hey, good to catch a live show after studying airspace. Okay. Studying airspace is one of you is getting your private, I believe, right? Yeah. So, yeah, and we do have some. I actually have some airspace videos on my web channel too. If you're looking at doing that as well. Well, this has been cool, guys. It's pretty good. I think we're holding around 20 people so far. Again, you know, nothing set in stone or scheduled here. We just thought, let's give it a shot. Let's talk planes. It would be cool if you could, you know, there was more interactive as far as physically talking to each other, almost like a Zoom call, but sometimes that can get a little crazy. So I figured we would just start off with doing, you know, more of the live type feed like this and just let you guys shoot out the questions and such. But again, yeah, I appreciate everybody tuning in. I will definitely add links to everything that I've talked about. Once the video gets saved and published, I'll add those links down there. Again, AS Flight Lines, Steve at Aircraft Specialty. He makes those. Cool thing with all these companies are right here in my backyard. So I'm like 40 minutes away from both the seat company, the fuel line company. So, you know, we talk almost on a daily basis, and we can run back and forth and make small tweaks. Again, this is really the way to go with these fuel lines and brake lines. I mean, they're all custom made, tested, guaranteed. He stands behind his work, and if you have a question or you don't know something about anything aircraft related, Steve's built many planes, a commercial pilot. He does the whole thing. So if there's a guy that knows the business, he knows these fittings inside and out. He knows everything about them. One thing technical-wise, I do want to add, and I've been hearing this a lot. I see when I hear people talk about this, and I'll just throw this little tech tip out there if you don't know. When you are working with a flare fitting, meaning a fitting that has the coned in on it, there is never supposed to be any thread sealant on the cone side, even on the thread side of the cone side. The whole purpose of the way a flare fitting works is that when you have two perfectly machined pieces, the seal comes when that cone gets inserted into the female side of the hose and is tightened down. That's what makes that seal. When you introduce Teflon tape, Teflon paste, Loctite, any of that kind of stuff, while it may make a slight seal at the thread side, if you don't have a perfect seal and you end up getting fuel in there, that fuel can erode away at the sealant or the Teflon tape. It can get into the fuel lines and you can have problems. Now on the opposite side, the NPT side, we're talking about the pipe thread side, that side you do want to use thread locker. And in fact, we use the Loctite, let me get you the exact model because I know there's about 100 different numbers out there. But it's the Loctite 567. It's considered a high temperature thread sealant. And we use this on the fuel line, pretty much any of the engine sensors in the engine, the NPT side of all of the threads. You put a couple beads, a bead around the first few threads, you turn it in, it squishes out, you tighten it down, and you're good to go. That's all you want to use. But on that flare side, any kind of a flare, any of these flare fittings here, anything here, no sealant, Teflon tape, nothing on these. It's bare metal to bare metal on the cone side. Now, where you're going to have an issue, where you're going to have a leak, and the reason that they wrap these fittings in wax paper is if you were to drop this on the ground, if you cause any type of deformation with these flare fittings, you're not going to get a good seal. So if you have a nice smooth lip and there's no dents, cracks, crevices on either one, you should be good to go. And that's really what you should be looking for. But do not put sealant or Teflon tape on the flare side, only on the NPT side. So just a little tech tip there. You can check that out yourself, but the flare is what makes the seal. Does Steve have the little hose for joining the calipers yet? I'm not sure. Not sure on that, Bob, what you're talking about. Maybe you're talking about down. Does he have the little hose for joining the calipers yet? I'm not sure on that one. Maybe clarify that question. Luke, Zoom would be good in Toronto. We have much Zenith builders here. Yeah, so we did the Zoom about, what was it, last year we did a Zoom call with Zenith. Zenith was doing a builder workshop and we joined in on a Zoom call. That seemed to work pretty well. You do have to have obviously somebody kind of moderating because people always forget to turn off their microphones and everything. But we can definitely give it a shot. I can possibly set one up and do put it on the forums, on the groups, and see if you guys would be interested in joining. And we would just do a similar thing to this, except we'd be able to talk and chat back and forth. So yeah, we can definitely give that a shot. Yeah, I don't know, Bob. I'll have to talk to Steve on that. I'm not sure if he does. I'm sure if that was something he was working on, I'm sure we can find out. So it hooks the calipers together. Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, the short little, yeah, the short piece. Good question. Let me check on that because I know what you're talking about now. Let's see here. Yeah, I'll check on that with Steve and see if he came up with versus just having a little short tube between the two. I know what you're talking about now. So yeah, I'll check with him on that. Anybody have Any specific questions on the Viking so far, on the aircraft in general, heater from Viking? Yeah, John, that's funny you brought that up. Yeah, the heater from Viking, let's talk about that. That is currently an issue for me right now, and it may just be something that I need to work a little bit more with Jan on. This is the heater system. It's very, look, you can see it's a very small unit here. It's a little miniature radiator. It's got 2 electric fans on it. You have 2 sets of wires, and basically high is both fans running, low is 1 fan running. And the way this works is you figure out a way, and that's my problem right now, is figure out a way to find a place, whether it be top, facing down at your feet, putting it on the side of the cabin, and basically you drill 2 holes through the firewall, and then what happens is you can see, I mean maybe you can't see, but there's a small loop here that Viking provides. Is this on camera, Major? They got a loop here right now. Well, you pull this loop out and you basically come out of here and go in and then out and back to the engine. So this little coolant runs to the radiator, you got your fans here. Well, the problem is there's not a ton of room in here to really put this. They show it kind of up at the top, going through the firewall this way. So if the camera's the firewall, they show it coming through this way and running your lines. Jan has his currently in the plane like this against the side fuselage, but I'm finding that I don't have room for rudder pedals in that. So I'm gonna have to kind of figure that out. There's not a lot of room in there, and maybe I'm looking at it a little bit too detailed. Maybe the rudder pedals are not as much of an issue as I think they are, but it is going to be a tight fit because you really only have a couple spots. It's either above the passenger's feet facing down or on the sidewall facing in. And then the fans will blow across the cabin or they'll blow down like this. So, but basically, yeah, they provide you with the fan setup, some hose, some clamps, and a switch. And that's the heater system for the Viking. When am I going to start it up? Yeah, that's what I'm shooting for right now, Bob. So the big thing right now is getting the header tank prepped with the new fittings because, of course, we're not using the barb fittings, which were the factory ones. So I'm waiting on. It's kind of a funky size because it's like an 1/8 or a 3/8. It's a small NPT size, but then I have to jump to this size for the fuel filter. So once I get this fitting here, or the 4 fittings, and get this. Once we get the header tank in the plane, then it will be just starting to run those lines from the wing root down to the header tank, and from the bottom of the header tank, which is really our main fuel line, will be going, well, there's actually, I take that back, there's a fuel manifold that's a little teeny block, and what that does is it takes the 2 high pressure fuel lines, brings them into the block, and then out of the block we head to our engine or to our Dynon fuel flow sensor, which will be halfway down the line. Then off of that, other than that, you have a drain for sump, and you have a small return line that basically is due to the fact that when you have the high pressure pump on the engine, when you shut that engine down, any pressure that's in those lines, it has to have a way to bleed back. Otherwise, you could blow lines off. So there's a bleed black line that will come from the main fuel line through a small orifice and then drain, basically drizzle back into the header tank. So this little block, this little manifold is kind of the hub of all the fuel. So two fuel lines in, 1 fuel line out, 1 drain or return line for pressure back in. So when this is in, and I can put fuel in this tank, then we have fuel to the engine. And I've already got batteries installed, I've got solenoids installed. I just have to rig up that center panel there for bats and pumps, and I should be able to turn on the engine and at least get it started the first time. So that will definitely be a big milestone in this build, because it'll feel like, wow, we've got to a point where I went from a box of parts, hung an engine, wired an engine, plumbed an engine, and I have an engine running on an airplane. Obviously won't probably run it too long until I have all the avionics and everything hooked up, but it'd be nice to get it turned over at least. Are you planning any access panels on the rear of the fuselage empennage to inspect the elevator cables, pulleys? I don't have anything planned at right now, but not to say I'm not going to. I know on the cruiser they have that one back there. I don't know what's all necessary yet as far as what I need to get to. So if I do need to, I'll definitely be going with the aircraft accessories guys. And I can show you a couple of his. I got a couple of his kits here just to show you for an example. He makes all kinds of doors and wing root panels, and here's another example of a kit you can buy. It's got the latches on it, and he sells with the hinges and the springs, the gaskets. We've also got an access panel for the wing roots, which are these little guys here, and these are the ones that sit kind of at the wing root, so when you're trying to do those last minute hookups, you've got this nice little drop down door here, which would be kind of like in this area here. So you can access connections and things there. Again, these are all pre-made. They come just like this. So you basically just have to take off the rim and trace a template, cut it out, clean it up, and then you rivet it all together. So he takes a lot of the fab work out. I will definitely put a link down to him because he makes circle panels, flat panels, pretty much any kind of access hole panel you need. You can get one from them, and I believe it's experimentalaccessories.com, I think is the website name. Well, guys, we're coming up on an hour here. Does anybody have any other last minute questions or any comments? Again, I really appreciate everybody tuning in. I know it was another short notice day. We did one of these in the past. We wanted to do another one, and all the feedback's definitely appreciated. Hopefully, maybe on the next one we'll be doing a little bit more work. This was more of kind of just a little cover some of the things that we're working on. And again, this week I'll be really trying to get through. I want to get my brake lines done, at least out to the bottom, and then start working on getting these this header tank prep so I can get that installed, so that I can start working my way header tank back and getting it prepped for being ready for getting at least fuel in the header tank side of things. So again, appreciate you guys watching. If you haven't already, make sure you throw a like on the video and make sure you're subscribed and all that good stuff. That's how we that these chats and these lives are going out there. If you're subscribed and you have the notifications on, you'll get that. It'll pop up and tell you, hey, we got one coming this Saturday, or we got one coming today, or whatever. And you'll get notified, and then you can, hopefully tune in. Let's see, Jim, are you still planning on using electronic circuit breakers? Yeah, that's a good question, Jim. So for those of you who don't know, I was planning on using the vertical power, the VPX. It's a solid state relay system. Now this was something I wanted everything to be solid state. And then I decided, and I got the Viking engine. Well, Viking is very specific with how their electronic side of things runs, because they've got the ECU. They don't want anything, in between. They have a very specific way it has to be hooked up. And if you don't want to get your warranty voided or your support voided, you really want to follow what they want. So I did initially work with Jan a little bit. I said, hey, here's the VPX manual. Here's your drawing. Can we merge the two somehow and get this to work? And we came up with some stuff, but it ended up really kind of cutting out a lot of the purpose of what the vertical power was doing. So for me, I still have to make that decision. Am I going to take these? Well, for one, I had both boxes. I had the PPS and the VPX, the two pieces that make up both the solenoids and all that stuff, which I don't need because I have standard solenoids now. So that piece goes away. But I still have the vertical power, the sport version. And so with that one, that will still allow me to do any inputs or outputs, any lighting inputs, anything output can be run through the solid state relay. But you know, I'm only talking about maybe half a dozen, maybe 6 or 7 things. We're talking about pitot heat, we're talking about strobes, navs, landing light. So, hey Kevin, that's awesome. Hey, look at that first super chat, whatever that you call that, that's awesome. So to answer your question, I'm still trying to integrate that. I'd like to, but if it gets to the point where I'm only going to be hooking up a three or four lights, and I've got this $1,500, $1,600 unit that could be used for something much more advanced, then I may just go with a few traditional breakers and call it good and just, you know, for me it was more about the cleanliness of the cockpit. I wanted it to be really streamlined, modern, you know, but with the Viking engine, I've already got some standard round breakers in the panel, so is it the end of the world if I have 2 or 3 more maybe down on the console or on the side? Probably not. So anyways, that's where we're going with that. Visit to aircraft specialty interview would make it. Yeah, Steve's a kind of a shy guy. I don't know if I've actually, and this is to answer David's question. I've actually kind of hinted at you know, hey Steve, let me come out with. Oh yeah, you know, I'm not a big, you know, he's not a big promoter kind of guy. He just loves what he does. He's got a real small compact shop, a couple guys working there. Yeah, definitely, I'll definitely recommend it to him because it is a pretty cool little thing how they have it all set up over there. If you find oil canning one fixed, give me one for RV12. Adhesive on one side. Yeah, I think we're talking, there's a question about oil canning. Again, I know a couple people have done that, both with just gluing angle in there, riveting angle. I guess it depends on where you're talking about oil canning. If we're talking about back here, you know, this is what it is, you know. They've been flying that way, so I don't know. I didn't decide to put any extra weight. I'm a big enough guy and I got enough extra junk going in this thing anyway, so anywhere where I can cut a couple pounds is probably better for my case anyways. Yeah, thanks Kevin, I really do appreciate that, man. It's nice having support and people watching the videos and all that good stuff. So David, that would place on the inside of the tail cone. Okay, yeah, we're talking about access panels, I'm assuming still, or oil canning. Yeah. So, yeah. Anyways, so yeah. Well, we're going to keep plugging along on this thing. Like I said, I've got a long list of things to do, and I just got to start checking them off one at a time. Like I said, I did get I got my 2 extra lines here came in today because I actually got shipped duplicate ones. I got the wrong ones the first time just because we had a mix-up. I had pre-ordered my first 2 lines, and then he ended up sending the same lines to me again instead of these ones. So these showed up today. So now I can finish up my brake lines. So I'll get the brake lines probably done. That's my next complete little task I'm going to do. Second would be prepping the top of this header tank with the new fittings and getting this thing in there and in that clamp in the back. And then I can kind of start working from there. And we'll definitely be covering how we're going to get these through holes in the side of the fuselage, how we're going to cut those channels out. Again, I really just wanted everything. You see so many Zeniths that are beautiful on the outside, and then you get in and there's zip ties and wires dangling down. It doesn't seem like it has to be like that when you're building it from scratch. You know, let's figure out a place to put that stuff and make it reliable and clean and neat and, you know, so on. So that's what I'm shooting for. It may not be completely possible, but anyways. All right, guys. Well, it's 8:08. We ran it for an hour. Looks like we had a pretty decent turnout for a Saturday night with short notice. Definitely appreciate all the feedback. I appreciate the followers. I appreciate the comments. Definitely, Kevin, appreciate the $10 for the latte or the beer. I'll use it for one of them for sure. And so that's it, guys. I believe once this gets saved, it'll be pushed out as a regular video that you can find in the library, and I can put it into the Super Duty build list or the playlist. You can find it there. If you just search AeroWorks Productions on YouTube, you'll find all the Super Duty build videos. We started with episode 1. Every episode has an episode number, and then a slight synopsis of what I'm trying to do in the video, hopefully. But that's kind of how I've been running those. So yeah, once this gets published, I'll add the links to these items you guys asked about, and then we'll put that in the video, and we'll publish it, and we'll go from there. So hey guys, have a good, safe Saturday night. It's 8 o'clock Central Time, and thanks for everybody for tuning in. Appreciate you watching, and we will see you on the next video.